G'day everyone, welcome to Talking Leadership. This is Eric Perez, your podcast host. Thank you again for joining me. By way of introduction, I'm speaking today with the founder of Creative Little Soul. Can I welcome to the podcast Chrissy Symeonakis? How are you, mate?
Hey, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me. So let's get this thing started where I always start this particular podcast by asking you, where do you think your leadership journey started?
I think coming from a big Greek family, growing up on a vineyard and orchards, and we were kind of thrown into the working life at a young age. But yeah, I think I was always just a bit of a natural question asker. I was quite inquisitive. I often could identify that there were better ways, or I thought there were better ways of doing things. And then in turn, those responsibilities got lumped on me. And then I suppose pretty much early on in my life and career, I was just always chasing that. Oh, what else is out there? What else can we do? How can we be better? And I think that's always stuck with me. And you just, find your way into positions of leadership. And here we are now.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me. So how did we get to the situation where we are today, where you're the founder of a business? What led you to where you're at now?
Yeah, cool. So I'd always been creative. So was really quite clever and skilled when it came to writing, anything to do with talking, probably too much for some of my teachers, and was just wanting to pursue a career in journalism, public relations and marketing. Was very intent that I wasn't going to work in the hospitality sector because that's where my family were. But obviously when you're studying and a student, hospo weekend rates are very appealing and the pay is quite good. And then over the course of, I'd want to say nearly 25 years now, I worked in, print media, publications, radio, but always had this little love affair with hospo and kept getting pulled back in. And then I thought, well, bugger, I'm going to, do things, but in a marketing and digital space. And that was before digital was actually really even a thing in the hospitality sector. Social media was still, non-existent. You had to send out press releases and faxes. And then 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I lost the vision in my right eye and have some muscle weakness on my right side. So at the time, I was working for a big hospitality group as their group marketing and events manager, managing multi-million-dollar portfolios. And then my doctor very firmly said to me that if you don't make some changes in your life and balance things a little bit better, I was going to put myself on a fast track to, progressing the disease, because stress is public enemy number one for multiple sclerosis. So I'd kind of been side hustling and always was that person that everyone would come to and say, hey, I need, the copy for my website done. Hey, I need this rewritten or, redesigned. So I resigned and I had all of about 2 weeks annual leave and just went all in. And yeah, now I have 14 people that work for me. I have office in the UK we've recently opened, and I've got clients in the US, the UK and Australia.
Wow, good thing you listened to your doctor then, hey?
Yeah, I don't know if what he had in mind at the time and what I have in mind now are still on the same level, but I do listen to my body a lot more. Part of me wanting to have a model where I could work from home was because if I did have those days I was feeling poorly, well, I could work from home. So where a lot of people during COVID went to a work from home model, we actually were ahead because we've always been doing this since we started the business.
Wow. Okay, that's so much to dig through there. But let me go to the next point, I guess. And I'm starting to paint a bit of a picture around this idea about leadership being potentially as lonely as you want to make it, that pathway to making those kind of decisions now. And I appreciate the level of self-disclosure because it paints a slightly different picture here with some of the questions I might ask, in that you knew you had a medical condition, but the better part of you, I guess the bit that won't let you sit down and just do nothing, motivated you to start that business. And so now that sort of looking back and seeing where you are now, would you have done anything different? Has it been because and why I ask this is not that, and our stress can be a motivator as well as being something
Yes.
that's bad for your body. And do you think in that sense, when you had that 2 weeks leave, that you went all in and started something because you saw that as a motivation to do something different for yourself, or was it more preservation of an income, knowing that after 2 weeks you had no money?
I think it was a little column A and column B. I think that I was always capable of going and starting my own business, but whilst I had full-time employment, it was all very safe, and it probably didn't give me the kick up the bum that I needed to leave. So when this, pretty point blank scenario was put in front of me, you know what? You don't know how long you have. Start living your life. And one of my driving forces was always to help other people. And that's very much been my ethos and my why. So I was like, okay, well, I can go and help other people whilst also helping myself.
So just a couple of steps back, I guess, is when deciding, so you got to some point in the business where you decided to go from one size to another. Did that generate stress, or was that again another challenge?
I think whenever you're in business for yourself, and I work with a lot of sole, business owners, entrepreneurs, people that are, a family run business. I think anytime where you are in business for yourself, it is stressful. I think that I found for me, it wasn't the relying on the work to come in, because I had partnered with some pretty cool partners who referred us and didn't on-sell us, but they had a product. We were high volume users of it. Therefore, it was a no-brainer for them to refer their clients to us to use their product. My biggest concerns were always money. So it was that cash flow coming in and then scaling at the right time, because in order to scale, I need to hire more people, but then I needed to train them, which I may not necessarily have had the money for yet. So it was just about finding a good pocket of not being pressured to scale, having systems in place to ensure my cash flow was okay, and then also having some really great friends who had been in business for a little while to mentor and guide me through the process.
Okay, that word mentor has come up. I might as well ask the question while I've got you here is, to what extent was the mentoring formal or informal, and do you believe it's one of the success factors for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a combination of formal and informal, and I suppose formal were people that I paid for their support and services, or to put me through growth, or teach me the skills and resources I didn't know. And I to this day, like, I've just signed up with like a business coach for another 12-week program for me, because I feel like it doesn't matter at what point in business we're in, we still need to keep making ourselves better or have someone to hold us accountable. So, I always try and pick a couple throughout the year. And then I'd say the informal were friends, confidants, people that had already maybe been through the process before I did, which was hey, can I pick your brain? Can I complain about this to you? And in return, they did the same thing with me.
This was your strategy from the start. It's an amazing way to do it. I haven't heard of someone doing this intentionally, and it sounds really good. And you touch on that issue around continual improvement and your own learning. And I've got to ask a question about this, because you said you need the coach to keep you, or professional business person to keep you accountable. That's an interesting statement. Is that because you think you might be a bit on the edge of making decisions that maybe aren't the best ones, or is it more about reality checking your strategy longer term?
As a creative person, I'm incredibly impulsive, and I think that is actually part of my success. I will take risks. I wouldn't jump out of an aeroplane, but I will take a risk on a new technology. If I'm asking the right questions. I think accountability for me is, as a business owner, it's very easy to focus and get involved in the business too much. as opposed to taking a step back and focusing on the business and then what our growth is, what personal projects I want to do. So instilling the services of, whether it's a yoga retreat or a dietitian, nutritionist, whatever I'm seeking out is just, I kind of look at it as I'm outsourcing a segment of my life, as people do to us, to just keep me on track in that sphere.
Wow, that's an amazing way to look at that. I've never quite thought about chunking your life up that way, but it makes sense because it not only are you placing demands on your own health to do things, but others place demands on you. And I think sometimes even friends and family forget that can be a stress added to your life. So,
For sure.
and I'll use my situation example. I'm been married for a long while here. I mean, murderers don't get as long as I've been married, but I've been married for a long time. I'm very happy in my relationship, and I've got 2 boys that are finishing high school, and I think my stress levels and the amount of grey hair that I've got has exponentially grown as they've gotten older, because it's gone from ultra dependent but not very resource intensive to extremely resource intensive but not as dependent anymore. And you have to switch your mindset a little bit, and that's over and above regular work, any studies you might be doing, other professional things like hosting a podcast or trying to find interesting people like yourself to get on here and talk about your journeys and stuff. So I can relate, but I've never thought about it in that way. And this is the beauty of having these conversations, is that if anyone listens to this, they didn't get this nugget of gold from me. This was you sharing what you do, and it's worth sharing, because I think one thing, the word you haven't used, but I think is what you mean by a lot of this, is that you need to find some kind of balance that suits you. And given the circumstances that you just revealed before, that places a different level of seeking balance, because you've got to do it for your own long-term health. So it's an amazing thing. And look, we could talk about work-life balance for a long time, but I won't.
I'm quite terrible. I'm quite terrible at it, which is probably why I didn't use the word balance, because I'm still.
And I don't want to judge you, because I don't think I'd get more than a 5 out of 10 for me either. But I'm in different ways. Like when I should be just relaxing and spending time with the kids, I'm reading stuff for uni, or catching up on some work reading or something, when sometimes you go into like this robotic, it's sort of autopilot, and you really don't realize what you're missing out on until someone brings it up. So this is one of those
great point. That's a really great point.
Light bulb moments where you go, maybe I should just stop sometimes and think that I can get to that email tomorrow, or I can get to this in 5 hours time. Why not do something for me now? So that makes a lot of sense. Let me ask you, and given that you're a self-declared creative type, which I'm the polar opposite of, it'd be interesting to get your response to this. So what's other than money, other than financial stability, what are your measures of success, mate?
I'm not driven by money. I know it really irks people, and probably my dad, who is so, ingrained, money, money, money. Whereas I was always of the opinion that if you do good things for people and you want to help people, achieve their fullest potential, then the money will come, and it does. I think for me, I probably kind of don't really take in everything that I've achieved, because I'm always looking at the next thing ahead. I think my biggest principles have always been just be a really good human, and you attract awesome humans, and then you can do cool stuff together. Like, that's always been my ethos and my mantra. And I will get phone calls and emails and messages from people, and they're just like, I needed a Hail Mary, and then I found you via a hashtag. Or, I put a post in a group and you replied, and then I went to your website, and the first thing I saw was about sustainability, and I am an artist creating something to do with plastics. So there's that synergy there. So I think that's kind of my ethos.
Yeah, and I often think what works for you works for you. And I've always thought about leadership and judging success for me is that if you're being of service to others, then the success comes, and the success that you can bring to others, and then the good karma that flows from doing that. Because like you, I reckon the more positive energy you can put out there in whatever sphere of life it is, that it's going to get visited back on you 100 times greater than what you gave out. And I guess that works the same if you're putting out negative energy.
Yeah.
it's going to come back to haunt you if you're not careful. So yeah, no, could not agree more with that. So can I transition then just a little bit to asking a follow up, kind of related to the success factors, but what have you found, and not to go to a negative, but more, let's call them opportunities, because some people don't like the word obstacle, but have there been things in challenges in your way, obstacles in your way, whatever terminology you want to use, that you've had to overcome? And when you got to that point, what's typically your strategy? Is it to seek help? Is it to deal with it yourself, or some combination of seeking help and doing it yourself? Like, how do you get over the unclimbable mountain?
I'm a human being. I think that being a chick in an industry that's pretty male driven, being in the hospitality sector, at times has its challenges.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Did you say being a chick?
Yeah, being a girl.
Okay, sure.
So
sorry, I didn't hear you.
That's okay.
No, that's cool. You're right.
I think I've often been in my previous roles that led me up to my business where I am now. I'm trying to think of the most eloquently and polite way of putting this.
Just be yourself.
Don't mince words.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I found that being an opinionated woman who wanted to change things, it was always challenging for me when I wanted to strive to do more, to bring my team forward. And being a part of a bit of a big boys club always was a challenge for me. And, when I was first starting out, a lot of people told me, why do you always have to be changing things? Why can't you just do, the minimum? Why do you have to take us above and beyond? And that was actually said to me by a manager that I had, which was almost kind of the catalyst of me resigning and then starting Creative Little Soul too. And it was, I don't want to sit mid-range. I want to be bigger and better and take other people who want that along for the journey with me. So I found that was a huge challenge. And another obstacle I would say is, particularly given that we work in a digital sphere, a lot of people were very adamant that they had to meet us face to face to want to work with us. So, there would be clients who I couldn't go and commute with because I was working from home in bed because I had just gotten out of hospital and had to have a steroid infusion. So there were a few clients that I'd lost in the beginning because it was very important to those people to have that, 15-minute meeting that we travel an hour and a half round trip to see each other. But that's since, moved on now that technology's evolved and it's not even necessary now. I've got clients I've worked with for years who I've not met face to face.
And that I think COVID's brought that to the fore, that business practice is going to change significantly into the future, because I think you can still do business without physically being in the room. And I don't mean business, I mean things like medicine and certain types of research. I don't want a doctor diagnosing me over the telephone. I need to be in front of them and eyeball them when you ask those uncomfortable questions about a test result, or hey, what does this mean? Because I suffer from the problem of looking up Google to look up symptoms of illnesses, and it's the worst. It's the worst thing you can do to yourself. Like, sometimes I sit back and go, "Am I dying from this? Like, what am I reading here? Where am I going with this?" And it's a silly way to engage with the world. But look, I can relate to what you're saying, in as much as I haven't started what sounds like a multi-million-dollar, multi-country endeavor that you've got going, which is more power to you. But from the world of work that I have, you're held in higher esteem if you can understand and analyze a situation more than necessarily being face to face, because the geography of Queensland is so big that I can't get in a car. Like, I travel an hour and a half north, and I want to get to halfway up the state, I'd be traveling for 8 or 9 hours, and you're not going to do that for a 15-minute meeting. I challenge anyone that would want to do that. Okay, look, let me ask you this, and this is a typical question I put to podcast guests. The idea of nature versus nurture. So you've had, it sounds to me like you've met a lot of interesting people and potentially a lot of interesting leaders. Do you think they're born, or they can be made?
I think it's a bit of both. I'm all about nurture and nature. I certainly think that there are those that are from a young age, have, support and resources and opportunity thrown at them. But then I also think that there are those others who haven't, who are driven, and there's this fire and then passion. So, yeah, I think it's a bit of column A and column B there.
All right. You, as a self-declared creative type, let me ask the question again from that perspective. Are the creative types born or made?
I think, okay, so this is my thing. Everybody is creative. Like, this is fact. There's science to back it up. So I think as kids, we are incredibly creative. We're totally inhibited. And, we're put into a situation and a scenario where we're like, green trees or purple elephants. Oh, beautiful. Like, we don't really care. But then I feel like as we get into the education system, and as probably we go, into high school, because I've got a little sister who's, 17 now, going off to uni, we then are then made to focus on this career path that we're going to go down. And then I feel like, we kind of are forced to focus and forge out what life and career we're going to do. And those creative things kind of fall to the wayside.
Yeah, so for the sake of the listeners, this program neither supports or denies the views held by the podcast guest around our education system. That's for everyone to have a unique perspective on. Now, I get what you're saying. I think it would be from the friends that I have, and now that I'm speaking to someone like yourself, that I think the creative types amongst us, I think school and rigid hierarchies in organisations would just be, if I could say this is my podcast, it'd just be a shitstorm. Why would you want to do it? But I reckon you'd go nuts sitting at a table waiting for someone to let you unleash what your creativity is. And that I've met people like this. I've got friends like this. I have family members like this. And they, being stuck in an office is the last thing that they would ever want to do. And
I did it for a while, and
did you get to that point where you thought, I can't be me if I'm still in this job?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a big catalyst for me as well. Like, I'm covered in tattoos, and I've got
nothing wrong with that,
but mine are ridiculous. Like, I've got a Care Bear, and I've got Disney princesses, and no unicorns yet, but these are all things that make me happy and, motivate me. So I would say they're probably a really bright and colorful expression of my inside on my outside. And I feel super happy. I love that I get to create. And I love that we're called into these big corporate offices because we need to bring the creative. We need to bring the outside of the box ideas. And I guarantee you, every time we walk in, we're the most tattooed, brightly colored, eccentric team of beings, and they love it. Like, this, these corporate rigid people are just like, yes, the creative team are here. All right.
Yeah, okay. So I want to ask that because I'm thinking of any number of TV shows we might have grown up on where you've got the suits sitting around in a room, and then suddenly you've walked in with a creative team tatted up to the hilt, and then they're all shifting very uncomfortably in their chairs. Have you ever had that situation where a potential client, without naming names, of course, or we're trying to be fair here, but have you ever had that situation where it's just hasn't penetrated the potential client or the person you're trying to get the idea through to?
No, I've had people speak to me via email and also via, like, on the phone. And like, I have a journalism English major background, and I grew up in South Australia, so we use the Queen's English. So when I write, I'll use henceforth all this prim and proper English, and I proofread as well. So in writing, I'm like very prim and proper. And then people will meet me and they'll be like, oh my God, you're nothing what I expected you to be, but I love it. And who can be angry of like an Elsa from Frozen tattoo? Not many people.
Nah, yeah, okay. You'd be thinking about what makes you tick if that did make you angry. Right. Okay.
And I wouldn't want to work with them, to be honest. I would be like, you know what? We're probably not the right fit.
Let me ask you a question then, because this is something I don't think I've asked very often, but does the way you work as a leader, that creative freedom, allow you to pick and choose who you want to work with? Like, if you really
100%.
Yeah, okay, because I have offline, I can't mention who I was speaking to, obviously, but I said, have you knocked back work? And they said, without a doubt, and we've said it to their faces, we'd rather not take your money and keep our integrity than to expose ourselves or our people to your crap.
100%. So
Right.
whenever we are talking to a client, I can like business relationships to dating in the beginning. So you're like, hey, tell me about you, tell me about what you want. So it's that whole, getting to know each other thing. And then, we have to be aligned. So we have to make sure that, price is usually the first and foremost. Like, I want to work with somebody that values what we're about. We don't super overcharge. We're reasonable. So we want to make sure that money is like very first up, we're on the same page. And then we want to make sure that we actually like what they're doing. We work with a lot of restaurants and food people. So the first thing I do before I even agree to talk to a venue or a food and bev vendor is I'll go and check, are they on the local council food poisoning breach list? If they are, that's a no deal for me. What do their Zomato, TripAdvisor, and Google reviews say? If they're terrible, I don't want any part of it. Then we have a conversation if they pass that. And I never decide on the spot if we're going to work with anyone. I need to go and consult with my team. And it's very much we're sizing you up as much as you're sizing us up.
Yeah, no, I guess the long term of that is if you've got to commit to pouring in your creative efforts with an organisation to get them an outcome, then you've got to know that you can work with them. Otherwise, it's a no-go. And I think that as part of good practice, it's checking out who you're potentially getting into a business relationship with. The dating analogy is probably not a bad one, is that, you want to find out what makes the other party tick. And there's some things that stand out that aren't too great. Okay, that's it's an interesting perspective, and no, I wouldn't have thought you would have answered any different. So, all right, Chrissy, last question, if I can. Looking back at your career, what would you say to let's say a 17-year-old version of yourself about what makes for effective leadership?
I think 17-year-old me thought she knew everything where she clearly didn't. I think that you need to have a combination of both positive and awesome, amazing leadership skills ahead of you and those that are not so great, because I think having a combination actually carves out the human being that you are. I think that by having leaders, if you can call them that, along the way, who are in a position who should be driving, motivating, and inspiring you, are less than that, I think you then can make up for yourself what to do and what not to do. And I think having had some great leaders ahead of me and also some terrible ones also have really defined the way that I treat and speak to people, how I lead my own team. And I have to say, I'm very fortunate. My team are amazing. We don't argue. There's no infighting. They, wish everyone a nice weekend at the end of the week. They wish everyone a happy Monday. Yeah, we even say we love each other to each other, because that's just the team and that feeling that we've got in our environment, which is pretty special.
Wow. Okay. That's an amazing way to end the podcast. So look, thank you for your time, Chrissy. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
For those listening, I've been speaking to Chrissy Symeonakis, who is the founder of Creative Little Soul. Thanks, everyone, for listening. As always, please follow the content, follow us on LinkedIn or YouTube. Some details to Chrissy and her business will be in the podcast description, as always. And again, thanks very much. And thank you. And we'll catch you all on the next podcast.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for initiating such a great conversation.